Hi, Emil Guillermo with the PETA Podcast. Don't miss PETA's 40th anniversary and holiday party coming up Saturday, December 12th, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Streamed live, you can celebrate with stars and special guests. Saturday, December 12th, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for PETA's 40th anniversary and holiday party. Buy your tickets now at PETA.org. This month, we continue to celebrate the wide release of the new documentary executive produced by Angelica Houston. Breaking the Chain is now available without charge on Amazon Prime. It features real PETA workers freeing dogs who are imprisoned in their own backyards. Here's more on Breaking the Chain, now available free on Amazon Prime, on this edition of the PETA Podcast. 10 years on a chain is like a prison. And then one day, Edith the dog was missing, and Jess Cochran thought she was dead. How Jess found and saved Edith. A true story from the new documentary Breaking the Chain. Next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On today's episode, PETA saves dogs one at a time, and Edith is a case in point. Edith is a dog who lived on a chain in a rural part of the country near the PETA offices for 10 years. For those 10 years, Edith's owners would welcome PETA's Community Animal Project to give her care, and then she was gone. And PETA field worker Jess Cochran, who cared for Edith, thought the dog was lost forever. Their story is just one story in Breaking the Chain, the new documentary executive produced by Oscar winner Angelica Houston. The film follows field workers like Cochran as they go around the Norfolk, Virginia area trying to save dogs from being chained and tethered all their lives. Here's Jess Cochran to talk about the life-saving efforts of PETA to save chained dogs like Edith on the PETA Podcast.
First of all, how does it feel to be part of a documentary that captures exactly what the Community Animal Project does?
We're all very excited about the documentary, and I feel very proud to be a part of it. You know, this is a topic that I don't think a lot of people know about, and it really, brings light to that topic that's, kind of been in the background for so long.
Well, it is sort of basic when you talk about animals and people and who comes in to help. It's people like the Community Animal Project who swoop in and try to make right things that are wrong. And it must be kind of gratifying to see yourself. I mean, I don't imagine you see yourself in action. You're just doing your thing. But when you see yourself actually doing the things that are really pretty incredible, helping people who can't help themselves with their animals, helping animals, that must make you feel it's like an out-of-body experience to see yourself doing something so good for the community and for people.
It was definitely very interesting to see myself work. You're right. I don't see that side. I think generally I'm kind of a shy person. And I think it made me realize a lot of things about myself and, the work that we do that I maybe did not notice before.
Well, like what? What did you think that, like, oh, God, this is really cool, or, God, I was really kind to that, or I should have been more forceful. What did you come away with when you were watching yourself at work in action?
We have a lot of the same conversations over and over again. So it's bring your dog inside. This is why. And it's like, I think that all of us genuinely feel those conversations every time we have them. Sometimes I think, am I kind of just going through the motions here as I've had this conversation 100,000 times before? And it's like, I really do feel it every time I have that conversation and try to connect with the people that I'm talking to so that, they both want they want to hear what I have to say.
Well, it is important because a lot of these people aren't even thinking about the animals that they are supposed to be caring for. And when you come in, sort of like the voice of reason to come in and make bad things better, you're telling people to, that dog wants to be indoors. That dog shouldn't be outside. That dog, that there's no indoor dog and outdoor dog. They're all indoor dogs. When you start hearing you say that, I guess it does seem like, oh, you say it 100,000 times, but each time you say it, it's because there's an animal in distress and you're caring for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think you can see in the documentary, it's the first time some people have heard these things. I mean, the conversation I had with the guy about all dogs are house dogs, you can tell he had never heard that before. Yeah, all poodles are house dogs, which is not the case in our experience either. Yeah. But, it had never crossed his mind that a pit bull could be a house dog. And now that's something for him to really think about and digest. And, maybe it did not change his mind, but it's information to build on. And, that's it. It's hope that things will get better and he'll understand his animals a little bit better.
But it also shows that when you go down there as the CAP representative, the Community Animal Project representative, you don't go in there as this, you're not like law enforcement or, ICE or something like that trying to like bust anybody. You really are going in there with caring and, dare I say, with love and, trying to educate and inform people. I guess you must have seen that when you were watching it.
Absolutely. We're not law enforcement. And if you come into a situation telling people what they should be doing in an aggressive or forceful way, it really does not work. And, we just wouldn't be able to do the things that we do. We offer a lot of services. And, I think that's what opens up our conversation with people, either, if they call us for a doghouse or spay, and then that gives us the opportunity to really have more in-depth conversations about like, hey, you invited me onto your property, and now I would like to share with you my thoughts on the whole situation, and we'll talk about spay neuter and the doghouse as well.
And so people, they begin this relationship, but they first call PETA for is it free spay neutering or free or reduced services, veterinary services? What is it that they call the initial reason for the contact?
Yeah, it's for free services. And I mean, it's, our work in North Carolina, it's, there aren't a lot of resources down there, and, people's financial situation is not stable. So it's not things that they could generally afford. Spay neuter at a private clinic is, over $100 or $200. That's a lot when you're really kind of just getting by. So, they call for our free services for their animals. And sometimes it's, hey, I ran out of money for the week. Can you bring me a bag of dog food? And that's something we'll definitely do.
I don't think people really understand that a lot of this is not for, this big ogre corporation, PETA, going in and trying to, right the world. But it really is, a service where you go in for the animals to help the animals, but in order to help the animals, first you have to build this relationship with the animal companions who don't realize how significant their role is to help the animals. And so you do develop relationships, right?
Absolutely. And, when we have new staff, I usually am a part of training them. And, I tell people, 70% of our job is talking to people. The other part, hanging out with the animals, by far my favorite part of it. But, it's about education and talking to people because, we can't just come in and take people's animals. So yes, in some situations we, educate them and get to the point of where they do surrender them because they understand it's not the best situation for the animal. But we can't just go in there and take the animal. We have to have conversations about it and tell them, maybe why it's not the best situation for the animal. So it's a lot of having connections with people.
And those connections develop into relationships, because if people watch the documentary Breaking the Chain, the Community Animal Project folks are going in there sometimes on a regular basis, and they see the same people and the same dogs, and it almost becomes like PETA becomes the de facto dog or animal companion, because you're there on behalf of the real owners who don't have the wherewithal, don't really know what to do. And so you get to know, how many times would you say in a lifetime do you see the same dog? I mean, pretty routinely, I guess, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have thousands of cases, but we schedule after each stop, we schedule a follow-up time frame. So if it's maybe a more urgent situation, we go back in a week, or, maybe if it's less urgent, we'd go back in 6 weeks or so. So these animals, these dogs and cats that we meet them, we go see them often, exactly like what happened with Edith and myself. I visited her all the time.
Yeah, Edith is a big part of Breaking the Chain, the documentary that captures the work of the Community Animal Project and of you. You're right there out in the field. So tell us about Edith. How did you find her? How did she come into your life?
So Edith's guardians had called into our office. It was around 2006, and were requesting dog houses. She was chained out several other dogs on the property, so they had called and requested dog houses for them. I was the field worker that went out, and we did our first basic intro, getting the guardians' information as well as all of the dogs on the property. We got them set up with a dog house. The other dogs on the property were pit bulls that they were breeding. So, it was always really hard because there were a lot of issues going on there. So, of course, Edith was focused on, but, it's like we would go there and there would be an emaciated dog. So there was a lot going on the property where she lived. So we visited often. And also, if I was just in the area, I would stop by to see her as well. She was always so excited to see us. She has this very endearing flop for a belly rub that she does, and she does it instantly when she sees you. It's just so sweet. I could never drive past her and not stop.
Yeah. Oh, and this is just because of repeated visits. You get to know the dog. And why weren't they taking better care of her?
Yeah. There, like I said, there was a lot going on there, and it was also hard to catch her guardian at home to actually have in-depth conversations with her because, there were a lot of people living at the residence. And, if we stopped by, it would usually be the grandson and, so we did not really get to connect with Edith's guardian. We did sometimes, and I think that, she really didn't see anything wrong with the way that Edith was living, because that's all she's ever known of how dogs live. So it definitely took a long time. And, I think one of the most common questions that I get about, Edith was chained outside for 10 years.
10 years. 10 years.
Yeah. And I visited her for 9 of those years. So I think a lot of comments are always like, well, I would have just stolen her. Yeah. I would have loved to just walk in there and take Edith and have had her, her whole life. But that's just it. the things that we do affects all of the animals that we help, and that if they do not surrender them to us, that would jeopardize every other animal that we help out there. Our relationships are built on trust, and if people in the community don't trust us, there's a huge problem.
Yeah, it's also against the law. You couldn't just go in there
Yes.
and steal an animal. And yet, I know there are people who think that PETA does that. That PETA, and then that they don't. Not only do they take dogs, they kill dogs. And you hear that, and that must pain you when you know that it couldn't be further from the truth. That in fact you're developing these relationships, and as I said, you're kind of like the de facto owner or animal companion guardian of these dogs that you help to bring back to a normal life, off the chain and into the home.
Yeah, absolutely. People say some really terrible things about PETA, don't they? And a lot of it revolves around our euthanasia numbers. And the thing is that when they say these terrible things about PETA and the euthanasia, it's these individuals, our field workers in the documentary, that they're talking about. And these are people who care so much about the animals that we help. And it breaks our heart, and we give so much of ourselves that these are a group of the most caring people I have ever met.
Yeah.
So it is hard when people say a lot of negative stuff about us.
But it's simply not true, because if an animal is euthanized, it's generally because something is, the animal has been is diseased or is sick, and there's no hope for the animal that's better than the euthanasia option. It really is. It is a matter of compassion, and I don't think people realize that the condition of a lot of dogs, and that you find when you're out in the field. I mean, the film depicts dogs who are decomposed. Dogs. I mean that must happen a lot, huh?
Right. I do think it's that people do not understand the animals that we are working with. There are situations that break down dogs both behaviorally and medically, and it's hard to come back from that. These are not puppies that people have raised in their house and now they're moving and they bring to a shelter themselves. These are dogs that their guardians, if they were sick or injured, or they're moving, it doesn't really, they don't have the knowledge to think like, okay, I'm going to take this dog to a shelter. It's like, I'll see if somebody wants him. If not, he'll be all right on his own or something like that. So it's like, these are not the same animals that are brought into the shelters by their guardians. They have gone through a lot. They've been chained. They've not been properly socialized. They have not been properly vetted. The odds are stacked against them.
Yeah. And so the best option usually is for them to be put down. But I think people don't realize that if you warehouse them in a no-kill shelter, how is that better than what they would have been chained up in someone's yard?
Really? Right. It's all about quality of life, right? It's, our basic needs need to be met. In neither of those situations, basic needs are not met. We have to have, stimulation. We have to have love. And if you're talking about 200 dogs in a facility, there is no way that those dogs' needs are met.
Yeah. So when the CAP program goes out there, I mean, you meet dogs, you try to help them, you try to help not just the dogs, but also the guardians, try to give them education, you give them free services. You end up essentially being, as I said, like the de facto guardians of the dog. And then let's get back to Edith again. What happened with Edith so that at some point the guardian said, they saw that you have a relationship with Edith. that they actually give Edith they put Edith up for adoption?
So we lost Edith for a couple years. Like I said, there were several people that lived on the property. So the aunt moved out, and we didn't know where she went. And I definitely thought, because of her age and general lack of care, that she had died, and no one really gave us any information otherwise. So when we found her again on the straw delivery, I went right out there, and basically, I mean, her guardian, I talked to him about her being older and arthritis, and how she really deserves to be inside now. And I was like, I've been visiting her for a decade now. And I mean, I told her I had every intention of adopting her myself, that I loved her and I wanted her to be with me for the rest of her life. And she agreed, thankfully.
Wow. And so how old was Edith then again? And how old is she now?
So Edith was 10 then, and she's 14 now.
Wow. And how is her quality of life? I guess with you, it must be pretty high, huh?
Yeah. Edith she is so fun to hang out with. She's a super happy, easygoing dog. We nicknamed her Bunny because when she goes to the dog park or, running around outside, she just kind of hops around like a little bunny, and she's full of life. She definitely has arthritis and she can't do some things, but she really does not let it hold her back.
Yeah. And I guess the adjustment from being chained up, I mean, to the day that she was, and to the day you adopted her, was she still chained?
Yes.
I mean, they never brought her indoors, even for a slight majority. No majority of the time.
I had talked to her guardian about that, about at least bringing her inside when I thought maybe she wouldn't surrender her, and she said, "Oh no, she doesn't like it inside," which is just as far from the truth as possible. Edith hates it during the summer outside. She'll go outside for a very short walk or in the backyard, and then she's right back inside. She definitely prefers the temperature to be regulated for her. So I mean, she definitely is a unique situation, because it is not typical for a dog to be chained for 10 years, leave all that behind them, and then just adjust perfectly into an inside setting. I have other animals. She is just a pleasure for everyone to be around. She likes everybody she meets, and that's not a typical situation for a dog that's been isolated and neglected.
Now, what is her background? She's a mix, right? She's a
chow mix.
Yeah, and so that's a lot of hair during the summertime. I mean, so
yes, it is,
and she's outside all the time, 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, every time we went, she had mats on her. When we did get her surrendered, her tail had to be completely shaved off because it was just one big mat. Yeah. So she definitely has a high level of grooming needs.
Yeah. And so the transition, taking her from the chain to your home, was it harder or easier than you thought?
It was easier than I thought it was going to be, because I knew that she had a lot of trauma in her past. It's not easy to overcome. And like I said, it's not a typical situation for her to just come in and be totally fine. Not all chows are okay with being around cats. I had cats at the time. I have cats now. And so these were all things that, I was definitely thinking about, that could have made it where she wouldn't have been a good fit for my house. But luckily, she came in. She was wonderful with the cats. She's such an understanding, gentle soul. It's really unbelievable. She likes everybody she meets. People, cats, dogs, everyone.
Well, this is one of the happy stories in Breaking the Chain, the new documentary that's executive produced by Angelica Houston. It really covers the work of the Community Animal Project. And, we've been talking about how Jess Cochran, who's a field worker, goes out there, discovers this dog, and for essentially 10 years, really, has this relationship as a field worker and then ends up adopting her. This is one of the gratifying stories of the documentary, but not all of them are this happy. I mean, to see these dogs on chains, and some of them have chains embedded on their throats. I can't imagine a dog just living chained up, and the chain becomes part of its body in the way that it's depicted. But that's common, right?
It is common, and unfortunately, there are a lot of sad stories out there. It's very common now, and I'm hoping that this documentary will really bring light to the topic, and the regularity in those sad cases will really decrease.
Yeah, and it's there's the people who do things like they chain them up, and so the chain becomes part of the body. But then there are the people who say, well, the dog can handle another 10 hours, if they're going to the vet or something. The situation of the sick dog who was in the rain. I mean, now how common is that? Don't tell me that's very common.
Unfortunately, it really is pretty common. I mean, we have an after-hours emergency phone for a reason, and I'm not saying it's every day, but it is a fairly common situation for someone to need resources, and either like with the dog in the pen, the local law enforcement, I think that they had tried calling animal control. They operate during business hours, and that's really why we have this service available to people. And also a lot of our calls on our after hours line, it's very loving guardians who have their animals, and unfortunately overnight things can change really quickly, and need euthanasia services at times when vet clinics are not open. And euthanasia at a regular vet is something very expensive that not everybody can afford. And then you're talking about at an emergency vet, you're going to double or triple that. Yeah. It's just, unfortunately, we provide services that a lot of people don't have access to in any other way.
Now, I know that we talked about the trolls, the PETA trolls who just attack PETA incessantly. And I'd like for them all to, and anyone who is under the spell of these trolls, to see Breaking the Chain and see what PETA does for the animals. Because if they see this film, they'll see the truth, and they'll see exactly how much field workers like you, Jess, really care. I mean, the conversations you have with people are so genuine. But like you said, I mean, you must have had these conversations hundreds of times, and but you still seem to care each time.
Right. It's it's a life of living on hope. And, I hope that the PETA trolls watch the documentary and their minds are changed about what we do. I'm not convinced all of them will, even though it is a very powerful movie. And I live on hope that, these animals that we serve, that their lives are going to get better, and maybe not their lives, but the next generation of lives.
Now, what would you like people to take away from, after they see this? What should they be focusing on? Especially if they're skeptical, what should they look for? What should they, if they want to, if they have the experience of seeing breaking the chain, what would you say to people?
I think the most important thing to take away from the documentary is that everybody is capable of helping these animals. They are out there. You may not, your eyes may have been closed to them before, but they're open now. You've seen it. It's out there, and that we all have the power to do something, either calling in to animal control about a chained dog, or, if these are your neighbors, or, going and talking to them, bringing the dog treats or some kind of enrichment, offering to take them for walks, and contacting, your local officials about enforcing tethering bans so that everywhere has them. When I first started working at PETA, we worked mostly in Hampton Roads. There were tons and tons of backyard dogs. And now there are tethering bans in all of the Hampton Roads cities. And we do not spend nearly as much time in the Hampton Roads area as we did then, because the number of neglected and chained, isolated dogs went down a lot.
Yeah, the anti-tethering laws, to tether the dog, I guess that's the legal term of chaining. But,
yes,
they've been out there a while, these anti-tethering laws, but I think PETA's efforts, city by city, at least around the Norfolk, Hampton Roads areas, has done a lot to, curtail the practice. And now you're going out to the more rural areas where I guess it's more dominant now, but there are moves to get anti-tethering laws there. And really, there should be moves all across the country to get anti-tethering laws, right?
Yes. We have a national side team that deals with these issues across the United States, but that's a huge area. That's why we need people to know that this is happening out there and that they have the power to do something about it.
Really, it opened my eyes. I that sometimes people chain dogs, and usually it's the big dogs, the ones that are kind of the stereotype is that they're the vicious dogs, the big muscular,
your guard dogs.
The guard dogs, right? Yeah, but the guard dogs want to be pampered. They need care, right? They want to be indoors. They're not. There's no distinction between indoor dog and outdoor dog.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
All dogs are house dogs.
All dogs, and really that when you say that to a couple of guardians in this sort of matter of fact way, it just sort of like, oh my, I can imagine that conversation. How many times he has that with these people with their dogs on the chain. But that's the work. That's the effort that needs to be made. That connection, that relationship. And Jess Cochran, I'm glad you're out there doing it, because you're saving a lot of dogs' lives, really, or you're improving their lives by helping the guardians see that there's another way.
Right. I'm happy to be out there, and I hope that this issue ends soon, and then I can retire.
With Edith, hopefully. I know she's still got a lot of pep.
She does.
Anyway, well, Jess Cochran with the CAP program, the Community Animal Project with PETA, among the featured field workers in breaking the chain. Thank you, Jess, and thank you to say hello to Edith too.
I will. Thank you.
Jess Cochran, one of the field workers at PETA's Community Animal Project, the CAP program, featured in the new documentary Breaking the Chain, executive produced by Oscar winner Angelica Houston. See the film now on iTunes, Apple TV, Amazon, Google Play, Vudu, and Vimeo On Demand, and go to our show notes for a link to the trailer. And that's for our show this time out. Contact us at PETA.org. You can find me on Twitter at Emil Amok, that's EMILAMOK, or on amok.com, AMOK.com, or see my work at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, their blog at ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. And don't forget, you can help the animals and PETA, especially if you have Amazon's Alexa. Just say, Alexa, donate to PETA. Our music is provided by CarbonWorks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.